This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 509 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host, Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Jobe Bellingham joining Borussia Dortmund, and we will preview the Club World Cup that is about to begin very shortly. For that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm fine. The summer has started in earnest in Germany, and that's a problem for a person such as myself. How are you?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a tough week for you. I'm doing fine. Summer has also started in Philadelphia. It's pretty warm, but overall I'm doing pretty well. I'm actually heading to Germany in a bit, so I will actually not be around for the Club World Cup when Dortmund play against Fluminense in the MetLife Stadium on the 17th, which is a bit of a bummer for me because it's not that often that Borussia Dortmund play in the United States, and obviously close to where I live, and on top of that, a competitive game. I think that would be the first one in that scenario. So yeah, unfortunate, but what you're gonna do? And on the other hand, I've seen so many actual Borussia Dortmund games at Dortmund and elsewhere that I'll be fine. Anyway, let's talk about Jobe Bellingham. He has joined Borussia Dortmund on a 5-year deal and is, of course, a very interesting player. Joined from Sunderland. Lars, what are the details of this transfer? How much money are Dortmund actually paying, and will they pay in the end more than the reported 40 million euro transfer clause that he had set in his contract as Dortmund tried to get him before the Club World Cup?
Well, the short answer is no, they are not going to end up paying more than 40 million euros. I think the base fee, there have been numerous reports. I think most have now settled in the region of something like 30.5 million euros with bonuses to come, some of which are considered to be likely to kick in, some of which aren't. I'm not quite sure.
He needs to brush his teeth in the morning, and then Dortmund has to pay another million or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Usually it's perhaps a bit more tied to like performance or actually being on the pitch and whatever happens to the team. But I'm assuming some of it is going to be like, you know, him making 10 appearances, Sunderland get a cool 500k or whatever. So I think most reports put the fee ultimately in the region of up to like 38 million or so, which would constitute a new record signing for Dortmund, unless you counted, sell-on fees for, let's say, Ousmane Dembele, for Sadren or whatever. So the outlay for Bellingham is probably going to end up as Dortmund's biggest transfer so far.
Yeah, that is exactly where I was going to get at. So, 19 years old, describes himself as a box-to-box midfielder, number 6 or number 8, something in between. Obviously, we know from his brother that he also was very polyvalent, as we say in German, a very versatile player. I don't know how much intel you have on Jobe Bellingham and how much you've seen him play before, because I have very little, but of course, considering that he is what we just sort of determined, probably Dortmund's transfer record signing in club history. Is the fee justified, and can fans be excited about the archetype of player they are getting?
I guess those are two different questions or lines of questioning, because I would argue
they are
that probably the fee is a little bit inflated by a number of factors. For one, just the market situation. Sunderland having been promoted means they have a lot more money at their disposal, so they could drive a bit of a harder bargain. Eintracht Frankfurt were very much interested. They are also in the Champions League now and have made all these big sales over the last few years, so obviously they have quite the war chest at their disposal. So I think seeing as Dortmund's record signings are all in the ballpark of 30 million, that started basically with André Schürrle a few years ago. I guess it's just like the way the market develops that even younger players without a lot of experience, or in terms of, Bellingham, not any experience at all in the first division, that's just the going rate going up and up. So I think there's an argument to be made that if his second name wasn't Bellingham, but I don't know, Smith, maybe he would be a little bit less expensive, just because there's like proof of concept, especially for Dortmund. With how Jude developed here, and how the family is helping the kids along, and that this kind of person works, because quite frankly he looks identical to his brother. Basically they look like twins, but they aren't. From all you can gather in terms of intel and what people say, they are very much alike in terms of how driven they are. Even, I guess, playing style wise, there's at least a partial, congruence of characteristics. So at the end of the day, I think I would personally probably have said 30 million is a bit much for the skill set he brings, from what I can tell anyway. But if that's the going rate, then that's the going rate, and they clearly wanted him. They went basically all in on getting him, especially ahead of the Club World Cup. And that's a statement of intent, and in itself that is, quite exciting. And from what I've seen of him, mostly from the promotion playoffs with Sunderland, I mean, the first thing that jumps out when you just look at him is how big and tall he is. Like, he's visibly much more of a physical specimen than Jobe Bellingham was when he came to Dortmund. Now, obviously, he was 2 years younger, so that's to be expected a little bit. But I would say Jobe is much more impressive just from a physicality standpoint. He stands a little bit above 190 in metric. I don't know if that's like 6'2.5" or 6'3" or whatever in feet. So quite tall. He gets stuck in duels. He's a very proficient runner. And, him describing himself as a box-to-box midfielder, that is basically exactly what he is, from what I can tell. Like, someone who gets stuck in duels defensively ahead of midfields, or ahead of the defensive line, I should say. So, can play as part of like a double pivot, but also can help in those transitional movements, can, drive the ball forward, even though, being a 19-year-old, you don't do that too often yet in most teams, just because there are more experienced players, but he has the skill set to do so. So I think he's a valuable addition in terms of that, skill set, because let's say Dortmund play with Metscher, Groß and Brandt usually as their midfield trio. There's not really a great proficient runner there, not too much, physicality and dynamism. Bellingham wins a lot more aerial duels than those three. He wins more tackles, but, that can also be down to him playing in the second English division, which is a very physical game, obviously. But in itself, that's also positive, because he's gone through that meat grinder for 2 years. I mean, whenever I look at the championship, it's completely crazy to me. Like, there's 24 teams. They play more than 40 league games and promotion playoffs and 2 cup competitions. Like, it's like they play 1.5 seasons, when in Germany you play 1 season. So he should be able to provide something to Dortmund basically from the get-go immediately. I'm pretty sure he's going to play a reasonably big role at the Club World Cup already. But in terms of the skill set, where I mentioned earlier that I think maybe 30 million is a bit much for what he brings, I personally haven't seen, the highest level of technical quality. Maybe that's just, my sample size of what I've seen from him. He doesn't score a lot of goals. Assists haven't been great either. So I don't know if he's going to end up providing much of a boost to their attack. Again, he's 19. Maybe that's something that comes later, because if we remember back to Jude, and that is basically what we'll do for the next however long Jobe is here in Dortmund. With Jude, he really only started scoring after a while at Dortmund, but then he had that one season where he was among Dortmund's best scorers. So maybe that's just part of the developmental process that his brother also has to go through.
Yeah, what I find interesting, I'm looking at the FBref scouting report of Jude Bellingham right now, and I'm comparing that to Jobe Bellingham, but I feel like maybe we shouldn't exactly do that. But what stands out for Joe, I mean, Jude Bellingham, pretty much everything is almost in the 99th percentile. He is like one of the best midfielders in the world. Pretty much everything is lighting up green. But what I also find interesting is the progressive carries and successful take-ons per 90s for Jobe Bellingham is at 0.92. Obviously, not as high as his brother, but it's still in the 80th percentile. It's still pretty good, and at least according to this profile, which we have to take with a grain of salt because it's against championship level opposition. But nevertheless, it is interesting to see that he has this, I hope, in his bag. And obviously, we saw it from Chukwuemeka a couple of times and when he played, how valuable it is if you have someone in midfield who can actually dribble past players and does not have to solve everything via passes. So I'm excited about that. Obviously, I think his main skill is going to be his imposing physique and tackling and getting stuck in, as you said. I think this is something where he will be very quickly in Dortmund fans' hearts with. So, yeah, I think from the player profile, he is maybe a little similar to Mecha. I don't know how you see it. So I am really wondering if Kovac plays the style that he plays, where Bellingham will fit in. What's your ideal double pivot, maybe midfield trio with Jobe Bellingham in the equation?
I think it's going to be sort of dependent on maybe opposition, because I think he could replace Brandt in games where Dortmund don't expect too much possession. So maybe those, Champions League games against, let's say, the likes of Man City or whatever, where he would, I guess, nominally be the number 10, like on the...
Be a good target man.
Yeah, and he also has played up front earlier in his career and even at Sunderland. I think I read somewhere that, which I'm supposing is probably not true, but that he was called like mini Drogba when he was, playing at the under whatever level. So I'm guessing that's not true, because like, why would an Englishman be compared to someone from the Ivory Coast? But regardless, he is a possible option for long balls and layoffs and all that good stuff. So I'm guessing that would be an option for those big Champions League games when, his physicality would be a bonus. But in a normal Bundesliga game, I don't know that he immediately replaces Mecha, Groß or Brandt. If like Brandt is still the number one option in the 10 position after the summer transfer window, which currently it probably looks like that. Because I don't really see Bellingham as of yet being an option as the sole defensive midfielder, which Mecha is playing, because he's much more comfortable on the ball. And obviously I think the lack of experience for Bellingham would be a bit of an issue there. I think Niko Kovac is unlikely to drop Pascal Groß if he doesn't have to, just because he's such an intelligent player, so important in many phases of the game, and obviously one of Dortmund's best assist men. And I don't know if for a Bundesliga game against, Heidenheim, you want to let go of the creativity of Julian Brandt or another number 10 for, the driving the ball forward from Bellingham, because quite frankly, you don't need someone to drive the ball too much when you have like 2/3 of the ball and you're camping out around the opposition's box. So I don't know. I think we also need to remember that Like, he's 19, he's moving into first division for the first time in his career. And obviously Dortmund will have, again, somewhere between, let's say, 48 and 60 or so competitive matches next season. So there's enough minutes to go around for everyone. And it's definitely a positive that Bellingham, at least in theory, can play every midfield role. Because obviously they might go to a double pivot with, let's say, Groß as the defensive midfielder and him as the 8. And we already talked about him being like a natural number 8 probably, but also be probably an option for the 10. So a lot of options, which is always good, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that he's going to be like a guaranteed starter from day one and everything's going to revolve around him, because quite frankly, that's not the kind of player you get for 30 million these days, probably.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Young Kuto. I mean, not quite 30, but, Maxi Bayer also not an absolute starter right now. But that being said, how would you approach giving Jobe Bellingham minutes in, with the, perspective of obviously trying to establish him as a starter? I think this is the goal here. If you make someone your record signing or close to it, I think you do that with the intention of him developing into a starter and sort of a focal point of the team. What is the best approach to do that? Do you think just to like throw him in there, give him minutes and forgive mistakes, or sort of slowly nursing him into the team and giving him minutes here and there? Well, I don't know. It's obviously hard to answer, but nevertheless, I don't know if you have a theory on that.
I mean, he's played a lot of football in the championship. So, like, he's 19, but we already talked about his physicality. There's a lack of experience at the highest level, but, like, from a physical standpoint, he's there. And I think it's hard to justify, as you kind of alluded to sign someone for that kind of financial outlay and then say, let's play this slowly and maybe you get a start every 3 weeks and we'll reassess in like, the winter. I don't think that's something that you can justify given, the transfer spending there. So he's going to have a fairly significant role, but I mean, we always talk about, or talk basically in absolute. So like the ideal for me is probably not including Jobe Bellingham in the starting 11 just from our perspective right now. So, but how often do you actually get to play the midfield 5 that you want any given game, given injuries and the load management and all that stuff. So if he's like Dortmund's 12th man, he's still going to end up playing basically starter minutes, and that probably extends even beyond 12 men to like 13th, 14th, 15th, maybe 16th. You catch that drift. So if he gets the minutes, let's say from Sabitzer, and eats a little bit into the minutes of Pascal Groß because he's obviously quite old now, and maybe even eating into the minutes of Brandt. Like, you don't need Bellingham to be a guaranteed starter for him to play starter minutes.
Yeah, fair enough. So your excitement level?
A solid 7 out of 10.
All right, I can work with that.
I think I don't know how. I don't know what would get it up from a 7 unless you're signing like a Ryan Cherki, which obviously is not going to happen now, or last season the Girassi, where I was convinced he's going to be a superb striker for them, bang a lot of goals in. Like, he's a central midfielder who doesn't score goals. Like, how excited are you about that type of player at the end of the day?
I don't know. If he is the player that I don't even want to say solves our midfield puzzle, because I think our central midfield isn't too shabby. But obviously, if he develops into an upgrade and I don't know, maybe somewhere to international class over the course of the next year and a half, maybe 2 years, however long that'll take. That would obviously be amazing, and is obviously a requirement if Dortmund ever want to be back in a Bundesliga title race is something that you, of course, need to have. But you need to have a lot of other things too. You just mentioned Ryan Cherky. That deal obviously did not come to fruition. He has been signed by Manchester City. I think most of the blame is being laid at the feet of Nuri Sahin, who didn't want him 1.5 years ago. And then, of course, reportedly, yes. And then also reportedly, Sebastian Kiel came in too late with an offer to John Textor, aka Lyon, last winter, and so the transfer also did not go through, even though I assume that Dortmund had agreed on terms with Cherky, and after the development he took this, I guess, last half season too, he just is now one shelf above Dortmund's shopping range, if you will. So Lars, is this something that we need to discuss as a big fat L for Borussia Dortmund, that they failed to sign Ryan Cherky when maybe it was realistic at some point, but Dortmund bungled it? Or is that a false narrative?
Who's to say? It didn't happen, so...
Maybe you are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, whenever you watch Ryan Cherky as someone who doesn't watch Lyon, it's because he does something crazy on the ball, or even for the French national team in the Nations League Final Four the last week. But like, I don't know how he performs on like a daily basis for Lyon. It's not like they had a crazy successful season or anything. He's obviously incredibly gifted on the ball, and I'm sure at City they are going to find a way to mask his deficiencies, but I think there's also something to be said for the deficiencies he has. It's not like he's known for tracking back too much. He's definitely not fast. So, like, at the end of the day, is he just a much more fun version of, like, Julian Brandt? Then I don't know how... I guess at the end of the day, obviously it would have been incredibly exciting to have him, but maybe if you watch this kind of player week in, week out, you also notice that, you know, not everything's up to snuff. So I don't know. My coping mechanism in terms of Cherky is he would have had a great season for Dortmund and moved to Manchester City anyway. So it's like we cut out the heartbreak or whatever. But if we want to look at it in terms of is it a failure to not get it over the line twice? Yeah, obviously, because they could have signed him in the summer and let a rookie head coach say no. That's not a great sign, apparently, or reportedly. And then in the winter, they made up their minds too late. Maybe because they let go of Nuri Sahin too late. I don't know if that's, you know, connected, and they needed to wait for Niko Kovac's approval of the transfer or whatever. So it doesn't shine the greatest of lights on Dortmund's transfer department, but it is what it is. Like, no sense crying over spilled milk, or how's the saying go?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I'll be honest, like, having Julian Brandt is not the end of the world as your number 10. I know he's getting vilified a lot, but you know, I still think he's a useful player, even though after the season he had, I think we named him as one of our disappointments, which he for sure was. But yeah, I would be okay with seeing Julian Brandt play for Dortmund this season under Kovac. Like, I'm fine with that, to be honest. But if you look at the squad right now, and I guess we can talk about Jamie Gittins in a second. But where do you see the biggest construction sites, as we say? Where do you think that Dortmund really have to upgrade? Or maybe also, what players do they get off the books as quickly as possible to make room for new talent?
To be honest, I don't see too many like glaring weaknesses in the squad. Like, the starting 11 is pretty fine to me. You know, especially the with the adjustments late in the Bundesliga season with the back three and all that, like, I don't know how many players are in Dortmund's price range that considerably improve Dortmund's starting 11 from, let's say, the last 5 or 6 Bundesliga match days. I don't know if that's even a controversial take or just being realistic. Especially when we consider that Nico Schlotterbeck is basically one of their best 2 players but wasn't available. So if we include him at left side center back, I'm not sure.
I was just going to say, it is always a fun exercise, especially for the, right now it's not really off season, but still, what is your, say everyone was fit, what is your ideal starting 11? Like, what system do you choose? And I don't know, can you just run them off from the top of your head? Or do you have to, like, pencil it out first?
Kobel in goal, Waldemar Anton, Emre Can, Nico Schlotterbeck as the back three. Maybe Anton and Can need to swap places, I'm not sure. Riasson.
Wait, can I ask, why is Süle out and Can in?
Because it's my personal preference.
I know, but maybe you could justify your personal
I think
preference.
Emre Can has been a perfectly good centre half ever since being swapped into that position. I think he plays well, especially with Schlotterbeck. I think he's your captain still, and it makes sense to involve him. And if we're talking about players they need to get rid of, I think Niklas Süle, with his 14 million euros a year wages, is probably top of my list. So he's not in my ideal starting 11, because in my ideal world, he's either on a much lower contract, which obviously doesn't necessarily have anything to do with my starting 11.
But would he be in your starting 11 if he made 8 million?
No, that's what I'm saying. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's unlikely that he's ever going to sign a contract for Dortmund with like half his current wages. So I'm assuming he's off somewhere else after the season. He could also be in this starting lineup ahead of Emre Can. So if you want to include him in yours, that's fine by me. But I was in midfield. So Riasson, Groß, Metscher, Svensson, Brandt. How many do I have left? 2?
2.
Girassi.
Bayer versus Adeyemi.
Yeah, that's. Bayer is, in my personal favorites, as it were. I think Bayer is ahead of Adeyemi, but I have to give it to Adeyemi because he really had a strong second half of the season when Bayer also came on a bit, but had a few injury issues. So for now, I would say Adeyemi, but down the road, Bayer probably overtakes him. So that doesn't include Bellingham, and it doesn't, in my opinion, have any major weaknesses where I would desperately try to sign someone. So looks fine by me.
Yeah, I mean that's something very positive to hear. I think overall pretty well rounded too.
Obviously we have to consider like Dortmund's price range. Like if they had resources, the kind of
if they had fuck you money, would probably sign someone.
Obviously it's not like the best team in the Bundesliga, and depending on what Leverkusen do with the Wirtz money and how Erik ten Hag gets on, that it's probably not even the second best team in the Bundesliga. But given how the market has developed over the years, I'm not sure how much Borussia Dortmund can improve on that starting 11. So I don't know if you see it differently, but if I can't fit in Jobe Bellingham, who's going to end up probably being their record signing, I don't know who they could target. Like obviously, if they let go of Brandt and signed a different number 10, that would change the starting 11. But again, I don't see like a gaping hole or weakness that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, I think some people are saying that Riasson needs to be upgraded to someone who can dribble a little bit better and has a bit more technical skill.
So
maybe
Jan Kauto?
Kauto is the answer to that, but so far he hasn't shown it. But again, we all said we should give him some grace because the adjustment always takes a while. Maybe next season he is going to leapfrog Riasson, but I feel like we're in a scenario that we had with Marcel Schmelzer for a while, where every time Dortmund signed a left back, we were convinced he was going to replace Schmelle, but in the end, I think it was Guerrero who sort of did it. But the I don't know, even Toljans of the world certainly didn't. Or I think Erik Durm was at some point viewed or projected to be ahead of Marcel Schmelzer, and that also never panned out. I don't even know if we want to go all the way back to Chris Löwe. But point being is I think we're going to have a Scandinavian wingback formation for a while in our best 11, and mine is actually pretty similar to yours. I'm also racking my brain if I would rather drop Groß or Metscher for Bellingham. I'm not entirely sure. I just need to see what the perfect fit is. Maybe it's going to be Groß and Bellingham, but Metscher and Bellingham could also be amazing. I also think that Groß and Metscher have a pretty good partnership as well. So, difficult one, but I think that is a positive. Dortmund, can they improve their number 10? Arguably, but also I think the Adeyemi versus Bayer debate is also a very interesting one, because I think Maxi Bayer it's not that far away, but Adeyemi is, at least in my book, still a little bit ahead of him, even though Bayer certainly is someone that hustles defensively, does a lot of other things really well, so could also be a change in the pecking order soon. And I think we also, as of now, have very good depth. I still consider Gio Reyna a useful player, as sort of a player you can throw in instead of Julian Brandt. I think that Gittens and Duranville are fun players to also have off the bench. And Sabitzer, if he's healthy, can also be a very serviceable guy, especially I think in a Kovac system. He's probably a little bit more useful than under Nuri Sahin. So obviously there are a few candidates. You just mentioned Süle. I think Sabitzer is probably also someone, maybe Özcan also, that also be on a proverbial chopping block. But that being said, I think it is not the worst squad in the world right now to compete with. But I guess we'll find out at the Club World Cup, which is kicking off soon. And Lars, I just found out scrolling Twitter that apparently Dortmund are the unofficial Club World Cup holders, which, if true, makes me, of course, very happy and now raises the stakes quite a bit. Apparently that happened when Dortmund snatched it off Barcelona and then went undefeated for the rest of the season. And Barcelona, who themselves got it from Real Madrid. A little bit like the unofficial World Cup, but just for the Club World Cup. So apparently this is being tracked too. I just learned that, and so
you just learned that they've been. It's actually a fun project. They've identified. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but the first ever competitive game in the 1870s or whatever in England, and in a boxing match, when whoever wins the game gets the belt, I guess. And it's fun to track that, because obviously, let's say for example Dortmund had lost against Holstein Kiel, the unofficial Club World Cup holder would be playing in the second division in Germany now, and tracking where it's already been in strange leagues in Eastern Europe or whatever. That's always fun. So I mean, Dortmund might lose the title to a team from, say, South Africa during the Club World Cup. So that's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'm having a lot of fun. I knew about the unofficial, I don't even know anymore, World Cup, but I was not aware of the Club World Cup. So yeah, now that we have it, I don't want to lose it. How do we go about this tournament? Maybe before we talk about Fluminense, we should talk about the overall approach by yourself, Lars. Is this something you're excited for? Is this something you take seriously, or do you think it's a dumb and cynical way for FIFA to have yet another cash cow? at their disposal.
Those aren't mutually exclusive, which I'm sure is why you phrased it like that. I mean, I can definitely understand the criticism levied at FIFA, and I mean, given the political situation in the US, it's very problematic to give them a tournament, and obviously they will also host alongside Mexico and Canada the club the real World Cup, as it were, next year. So I can understand all that, and everyone who's boycotting the tournament for whatever reason has my sympathies, whatever. But for me, A, it's work because Dortmund are playing, so I'm going to be writing about it, and thus also watching their games. And B, I'm a sucker for tournament football. I love the Euros. I love the World Cup. I love being able to sit at home or, in a bar, whatever, and, watch teams I don't necessarily care about play football during the summer and have a beer by the side. So to me, every tournament football in the summer is welcome. I also like the under 21s, which are currently going on, but I'm, for work reasons, going to prefer the Club World Cup. But it's free entertainment for me, and maybe that makes me a weaker person than all those who are strong enough to boycott the Club World Cup. But to me, it's maybe I'm making it too easy on myself, but once the first whistle is blowing and the games are going on, I personally don't find it too hard to focus on the football.
Yeah, I am similar because I actually really like the idea of this.
That also, like, I think it's quite Eurocentric arrogance to just say, oh, it's another cash cow and they already play enough football. Like, ask fans from, Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa how excited they are that their club gets to face a team that was in the Champions League final last year, and a big club from Brazil, and who knows, Inter Milan or Real Madrid in a knockout stage. Like, it's a once in a lifetime so far, because the Club World Cup is going to change.
A first in a lifetime.
Yeah, I guess. But like, they are all very excited, and that, I think it's just a bit arrogant for us Europeans to say or to play it down, because for others this is like a dream come true.
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, this is a really amazing tournament for like cultural exchange, for fans from all kinds of throws of life to come together and celebrate football, a game which we all love. And obviously, you see different football cultures, you say different kinds of playing styles, all that. So I really like the expansion of the Club World Cup in theory. If it weren't tainted by people getting chased around by ICE agents. And I guess the United States is also probably not the best host, because the enthusiasm for this sort of tournament is just not where it needs to be. I think if it were in a different location, the hype for the Club World Cup would be much higher. But I understand why they sort of wanted to, do a little Confed Cup kind of style thing where they sort of test how the World Cup in a year would work with this in the United States. But that being said, I personally am very excited. I want Dortmund to win this thing. I want them to really try hard, and I find myself sort of not really be too enthusiastic emotionally yet, and sometimes I feel like if I'm not as enthusiastic as I need to be about something, then the players often aren't either, for some weird reason, some weird intangible reason. But I just hope that they can get their focus up for this. I'm sure it's not easy. Some players went on vacation for a little bit, and then obviously some played Nations League and whatnot. But still, I'm sure the adjustment to now play on the highest level again isn't easy. There aren't any test games for it either. You just basically start to play against Fluminense, and on Tuesday that is. So yeah, I honestly, I'm excited. I know very little about Fluminense. I've not watched the Brazilian first division since the Neymar days at Santos.
He's back there, isn't he?
Yeah, he is actually. And yeah, of course, I cannot get past this segment without saying Chupa Coringa. But that being said, Lars, what have you so far learned and gleaned about the Club World Cup? I don't know if we can get around talking about Dortmund's what I find very dreadful jersey. But what would your preview be of the first game and maybe the group that Dortmund have been drawn into?
Well, first of all, The Athletic has, I think, ranked Dortmund's Club World Cup jersey 4th out of all 32. And to be honest,
they are blind.
I don't think they are too far off because there are some gopping jerseys and some just really boring ones as well. Like,
okay.
I mean, not to throw shade at some of the teams, but, you know, if your jersey is just red with like a white stripe on the shoulders, like not even like Arsenal, but like the thin white stripe, and it's basically just a red t-shirt, that's just boring.
So are you talking about River Plate or about
River Plate have
Salzburg?
one of those, me and my Eurocentric arrogance, one of those exotic teams. I can't remember which one, and I don't want to get cancelled, so we'll leave it at that. I don't really mind the Dortmund jersey, but I say this about pretty much every Dortmund jersey, which people have deemed to be absolutely horrible, so I don't know. I even especially like the pink one, which ultimately only ended up being the goalkeeper's jersey. I was hoping it would be like the away jersey, as it were, which Dortmund would be wearing against Mamelodi Sundowns, because they are the second name team, so basically play in the away strip. Which I don't know what that is, because they haven't really announced in the away strip, so I don't know. Fluminense, as I said before, I'm working on the Club World Cup games and all that, so we've done previews, some of which haven't been published yet, and I haven't found anyone willing to talk to me about Fluminense. Like, I have talked to experts on Mamelodi Sundowns and Ulsan HD from Korea. I haven't found anyone who was willing to talk to me from Brazil, so all I know about them is who plays there, and like going through the list of players. Like, obviously Thiago Silva is the main one. He's over 40 now, still their captain and playing in central defense as he did for PSG, Milan, Chelsea, all those years. Also, you might remember Ganso from back in the day when you watched the Brazilian league. He's, I think, our age, so 35. Honestly, I can't really say too much more on them. I think the bookies have Dortmund and Fluminense as the clear-cut favorites to, get out of the group. But I think that's basically down to Dortmund being a very good team and Fluminense being from South America, when they also have a team from South Africa and Korea in the group, which is obviously not the traditional football powerhouse kind of market. But from what I gather, I would probably say Mamelodi Sundowns and Fluminense are at least on level par in terms of like individual quality, because Sundowns are one of the richest clubs in Africa, owned by the family of the African Confederation. So they have a lot of interesting players. I don't know how many Dortmund fans will remember Tashreeq Matthews, who I think played 2 games for Dortmund's under-23s under, who might have been Farke. I don't know. Maybe Sievert. So it's been a few years. I think those 3 teams are probably going to end up fighting for the win in the group. I think Ulsan, on paper, clearly the weakest team, but who's to say what that means at the end of the day? It's not like, even after talking to people, I'm an expert on Korean club football, so I think this is very much one of those instances where the European teams basically need to trip over their own feet to not get out of the group at least, and then maybe play against each other. So that's how teams from South America or, one of the more, let's say, less fancy teams might make it deep into the tournament. So in terms of Dortmund, like, this is a group they clearly need to get out of without too much difficulty. And I'm assuming, as you mentioned earlier, if they are in the right mindset, if like there's not too much rust after not playing a game of club football since, what was it, May 13th or so, May 17th, 24th, I don't know. One of those in May against Kiel. So let's say we don't know whether they'll be able to, keep their run going, but surely the group can't be too much of an issue.
Yeah. Just one detail, Tashreeq Matthews has played under Benjamin Hoffmann when he was at Dortmund.
Did he play in the youth?
I think under 19 or something.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
But, not a detail I would have known had I not looked it up. I don't even remember Benjamin Hoffmann being a Dortmund coach. So, I'm just not good with names. But yeah, honestly, I'm really interested to see what kind of form Dortmund are in, and if we see the Hinrunden Dortmund or the late Rückrunden Dortmund team. We shall see what we can expect. I think there is going to be a little bit of ramp up and certainly some rust to be shaken off at the same time. It is a nice opportunity for players to put themselves in the shopping window if that is the case. Like I said, I'm just excited to see these games, to watch these games if I get the chance to do that, and obviously it should be a fun tournament. I think right now the hype is not great in the United States. I think they've slashed ticket prices by 85% or something like that. Granted they were ridiculously priced as they usually are in the United States, and then if you add like prices for parking and concessions, it is always just a complete rip-off. But yeah, I think it still has a chance to become something cool and a tradition that we might all cherish, and even the European-centric football fans will find a way to like the Club World Cup. I mean, I always thought it was really rad that Dortmund are a Club World Cup winner. To be Club World Champions is just has a nice ring to it, so I would not mind that being the case again. But Lars, as I promised, maybe briefly talk about Jamie Gittens, because there was for the Club World Cup also an extra transfer window that opened and shut last Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, and apparently Jamie Gittens joining Chelsea was close, but Borussia Dortmund did not cave on their demands, according to reports. So what do we make of this situation?
Well, first of all, the developments on Tuesday themselves were quite surprising, I think, because you didn't really get the sense that anything was going to happen with Chelsea and Gittens. And quite frankly, I still don't understand why they were so, desperately trying to get him on the books for the Club World Cup, because Chelsea have roughly 30 wingers right now under contract, so I don't really see a need for them to add another one. But clearly they've identified Gittens, and all reporting is
I honestly don't think it's wise to think about the sense and nonsense of Chelsea's transfers dealings.
Yeah,
honestly, a waste of time.
Yeah, but they still have reportedly agreed already a deal with Gittens until 2032, which in Germany would not even be possible. But
I was just gonna ask, is that a thing now that you can give someone a 7-year deal?
I mean, Chelsea have also signed players for even longer, I think. So elsewhere, that's possible.
I did not know that there's a different contract year limit in different countries.
Yeah,
I always assumed it was sort of a UEFA regulation, at least that's 5 years.
No, I think the 5 years is a German specific market thing, because I think I recall in Spain some contracts being longer as well, so I don't know.
All right, maybe a debate for another day if lifting that limit might help out clubs.
Sure.
But whatever.
So like the development.
Not if it's Niklas Süle.
So the development on Tuesday itself was quite interesting. I was apartment hunting, so I didn't really follow most of it, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because I don't know, like the every 5 minutes there's a new update by all these transfer insiders on Twitter. I don't know how exciting I find these things these days. But at the end of the day, they held firm, apparently wanting 60 plus million for Gittins, and I think the ultimate offer from Chelsea reached 55. Whether that's bonus included or not, I would assume so, because otherwise they would be pretty close to the 60 that were apparently, the asking price from Dortmund. To me, quite frankly, I think I probably would have taken 55 for Gittins, because I think there's a certain limit to, again, his skill set, his development. While obviously he's made strides and scores a lot of goals, and we talked about him in a positive light also on our award show, I'm still not entirely convinced that he's ever going to be a player like for the top level in the Premier League, for example, because I think there are quite a few deficiencies in his game. And I mean, obviously it's a bit problematic to, make any character assumptions or whatever, but I don't necessarily get the sense that he's the hardest worker in terms of getting rid of some deficiencies. Maybe that's unfair because I don't know the kid, but that's just the sense I'm getting also from like reporting around the club. It's not like he's being painted as this mega diligent young guy who's working tirelessly, like Jobe Bellingham, for example. He's being talked about in those terms. So ultimately, I probably would have said 55. That's not a bad deal for Gittins, and especially, I mean, when the player's already agreed to deal with another club, that basically means he wants to leave ASAP, and obviously there's still going to be a real transfer window after the Club World Cup. But I mean, let's say Jamie Gittins suffers like a normal muscular injury that takes him out for like a month. I don't know that Chelsea are still going to try to sign him, and like holding out for a few million more, is that worth the risk of maybe not getting anything at all this summer? Because obviously Gittins is the key to everything Dortmund can still do on the transfer market, basically, because no one else they are happy to let go is going to bring in this kind of money. So again, I personally probably would have taken the final offer from Chelsea. I think that it would have been one less headache, as it were, but ultimately I can also not fault a club for standing firm on what they believe to be a fair evaluation on a player who's still on a long-term contract. So maybe I'm sitting on the fence, but I can understand both sides of the argument.
Well, I've heard people say that it's good on Kill for not being a pushover, so to speak, and not caving on his demands. I don't know if this is something that's going to help him in negotiations in the long term or not. I don't know. I'm not in that kind of game. I also don't know if you bet that Jamie Gittins next season will significantly increase his transfer value. I mean, it definitely can happen. I think he certainly has the skills to bring this up to, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the 70 million region. If we remember the Hinrunde he played, and if he would show that consistently, I think he would be there, honestly. So, yeah, I understand that Dortmund maybe also don't want to let him go right as the Club World Cup starts, and I don't know. I got nothing. Maybe it would have then helped to develop Diranville more. I don't know, and also I get a lot of fans having the sentiment that they just want to see Gittins out of the door because he's clearly not really intent on staying at Borussia Dortmund, and maybe that is against the, I don't know, will of the romantic. But anyhow, I think we can leave it here, Lars. Thank you again for coming on, and Yeah, will be an exciting Club World Cup. I can't promise that I'll be around for an episode next. Well, I can definitely promise that I won't be around next week, but the week after. So I think we will have to do a bit more of a summary style Club World Cup review. But anyway, as always, everyone out there, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can always drop them in our YouTube comments. And since it's the off season, we always love your questions. Maybe a little mailbag is something we should do on the next episode or the one after that. But anyway, Lars, like I said, thank you. And everyone out there, enjoy the Club World Cup. And we'll see you on the flip side. Goodbye.